NHRA today goes back in time to the 1990 Hurst Mr. Gasket Pro Stock Challenge.
Talk about your weird sensations. Hello, everyone. I'm time traveler Steve Evans, and welcome to this rather bizarre edition of NHRA Today. You see, our producers, they anticipated your need for speed during this awkward time of the year. So they have transported Dave McClellan and me back to September 1st, 1990, to Indianapolis Raceway Park to cover the Mr. Gasket Hurst Pro Stock Challenge. The 8 greatest Pro Stock cars in the world, $50,000 cash to the winner. Now, I began my trip in New York, and I got here okay. Dave McClellan was coming from California. I sure hope he made it. David, are you there, boy? Dave.
Steve, I hear you, but where are you? Oh, here we are. IRP in the heat of the summertime, and the 8 best Pro Stockers are getting ready to do it here in the Mr. Gasket Hurst Pro Stock Challenge. Here's the way they qualified. The Oldsmobile of Warren Johnson, #1. The Pontiac of Jerry Ekman, #2. Third, the defending champion, the Oldsmobile of Larry Morgan. Fourth, the Oldsmobile of Mark Powick. Fifth, the Chevrolet Beretta of Bruce Allen. Sixth, the Ford of Bob Glidden. Seventh, the Chevy of Joe Lapone Jr. And eighth, the Dodge of Darrell Alderman. Steve, tell us how they match up and who'll race who in the first round.
Thank you, David. Glad to see you made it. And you know, you look weeks younger. All right, here's who races who in the Mr. Gasket Hurst Pro Stock Challenge. It'll be Warren Johnson in his Oldsmobile up against the only Dodge in the sport, that of course being Darrell Alderman. Mark Powick in his Oldsmobile will be up against Bruce Allen in his Chevy Beretta. Allen has made the challenge final round 4 times and has won it twice. Continuing, it will be Jerry Ekman from California up against Pennsylvania's Joe Lapone Jr. Ekman in a Pontiac, Lapone in a Chevy Beretta. And defending challenge champion Larry Morgan from Ohio in his Oldsmobile up against the Ford Probe of Bob Glidden. In time trials, Glidden was the quickest of all 8, so he's got a real shot at winning his 3rd Mr. Gasket Hurst Pro Stock Challenge. And David, did anybody tell you how we're going to get back?
Not a word to me, Steve. I guess we'll just have to wait and see, because on the racetrack right now, we have got the 8 factory hot rods that make up this field. These cars are identical in engine displacement, a maximum of 500 cubic inches. They can weigh no less than 2,350 pounds with the driver on board. They run on racing gasoline, pumped through 2 giant 4-barrel carburetors. These cars are capable of topping 190 miles an hour. Bruce Allen at the wheel of the Super Shops Beretta, the #5 qualifier. He had one #1 position this season. In the 14-race qualifying season, Mark Powick had one #1 spot. That picked him up the national record. He ended up #4 in the Mr. Gasket Hurst Pro Stock Challenge. The Oldsmobile of Powick is in the near lane. The Chevrolet of Bruce Allen in the far lane. Powick lasts the stage. The advantage off the starting line by Allen paid off at the finish. 7:43, a speed of 186 miles an hour as Mark Powick falls in round #1. Let's watch again. Look at the car in the far lane. He moves perceptibly ahead of Mark Powick. That gives him about 0.04 of a second advantage. He reacted quicker to that green light. He got what we know as a hole shot. At the finish line, Powick and his Oldsmobile tried to come from behind, but it was not to be, as Bruce Allen and his Chevrolet stayed out in front and won his first round race. The 2-time champion advances to the Final 4. Steve?
Let me ask you something, Bruce. Is the track a little slick? It's awfully hot.
It was slick for us. We went out there and shook a little bit, and right in the bottom of 2nd gear. Could be our car setup, but I think the track's deteriorating. It's hot, like you said. It gets a little spongy.
See you next round.
The heat of the day is going to affect every racer involved in this Hurst Mr. Gasket Pro Stock Challenge, including the defending champion, Larry Morgan, at the wheel of Bob Pinella's Castrol Oldsmobile. His competition, the only man to have won this event besides Morgan and Bruce Allen, and that's Bob Glidden. Throughout the season, he had one #1 qualifying spot and a DNQ, a very rare happening for Glidden. Larry Morgan used a #1 spot, one #2, and one #3 in a host of midfield qualifying positions to earn enough points to come in the #3 spot. Glidden in the Motorcraft Ford Probe is in the far lane of the racetrack. Morgan in his Oldsmobile in the near lane. We're riding with Glidden. And Morgan powers past his 7:35, 186-mile-an-hour run, just 0.005 of a second quicker than Glidden.
NHRA Today is being brought to you by Firestone, makers of Firehawk performance tires for the street, the track, and the strip. Tires that meet the test. And by Castrol GTX, the motor oil that provides maximum protection against viscosity and thermal breakdown.
Brought to you by Firestone, tires that meet the test.
Welcome back, everyone, to September 1st, 1990 at Indianapolis Raceway Park. I'm sure a lot of you in the colder climes wish you could have time traveled with Dave McClelland and me to this toasty, warm Labor Day weekend. But what the heck, we're only here for the afternoon. I think we're only here for the afternoon. So far, the racing in the Mr. Gasket Hurst Pro Stock Challenge has been, well, just sensational. Unless, of course, you're a Bob Glidden fan, as most of these Hoosiers are. Glidden getting blown away in round #1 by Larry Morgan. Now, the fact that Bruce Allen survived round 1 competition is no surprise. He has won more money in this particular event over the years than, well, any other driver. Now, I know a lot of you at home are saying, Evans, I'm an NHRA member. I read my National Dragster right after Labor Day. I know who wins all the rest of these races. Well, if you're not a member of NHRA, you should be, because you get the pen, the patch, the decal, the rule book, 48 issues of action-packed National Dragster. And if you call the number on your screen right now, you'll also get Diamond P's home video, Drag Racing 89. So do it. Hey, David, are we ready for the second half of round 1?
Steve, we're ready on the starting line, and Bruce Allen is getting ready for the final 4 in the pit area. They got the transmission out, and I would guess that they are working on the clutch on that Chevrolet Beretta, because with the heat affecting the racetrack like it is, that could be the crucial setting. On the starting line right now, it is a Chevrolet versus Pontiac battle. In the near lane, it is the Benzoil Pontiac, driven by Jerry Ekman. Throughout the 14 races where they earned qualifying points, he had 3 #1 qualifying spots. His total points gave him the #2 qualifying position. Joe Lapone Jr. used one #2, one #3, one #4, and a host of mid-range qualifying times to put him in the #7 spot. Lapone driving the Summit Racing Chevy Beretta, a 500 cubic inch wrapped motor Chevrolet underneath the hood. He's over in the far lane. Jerry Ekman and his partner Bill Orndorff putting that Pontiac on the starting line in the near lane. By just a few feet, pulls it out at the finish line, a 7:41 at 186. Lapone actually ran quicker, a 7:40, but it was the advantage. The whole shot off the starting line by the car in the near lane. Watch it. It will move ahead of Joe Lapone, and did. And that is what gave Jerry Ekman the victory here in round #1 of the Hurst Mr. Gasket Pro Stock Challenge, and advances the Pontiac into the final 4. As they neared the finish line, it was a close race, but the power of the Pontiac just enough to hold off the charging Chevrolet of Lapone. Jerry Ekman taking this very valuable first round win, leading possibly to a $50,000 payday. That's the Dodge Daytona of Darrell Alderman. This is the Oldsmobile Cutlass of Warren Johnson. WJ got to be considered the favorite. He is the #1 qualifier. Let's go to the far end, and Steve.
Oh, boy. The racing is incredible. It was a heck of a race.
It was quite a race. Yeah, Joe, I looked over, and Joe was right there. I didn't know what was going on. He was right there.
Your 7:41 beat Joe's 7:40. Doesn't get a lot closer than that.
Not much closer than that. Good race, Joe.
Sorry to see you out.
Yeah, me too.
All right, let's continue on with the first round of the challenge.
Steve, and what a challenge it is. The Oldsmobile and Dodge on the starting line. The Wayne County Speed Shop Group fielding this Mopar Parts Dodge Daytona. For them, it is quite a mountain to climb. Alderman has got to be happy just to be a part of this very elite 8-car field. He had 3 #1 qualifying spots throughout the year, but also he had 2 did not qualify. Throughout the season, you could always find WJ at the top of the field. 4 #1s, 6 #2s, and 2 #3 qualifying spots put him in the #1 position here in the Hurst Mr. Gasket Pro Stock Challenge. And Johnson prevails by about a half a car length. Listen to the times. Johnson at a 7:37. Alderman had a 7:39, only 2/100ths of a second slower. Johnson also put 2/100ths of a second in the bank on the starting line. And as we look again at the finish of this race, you can see there's 4/100ths of a second difference. How much space is it? Just about a half a car length as they go across the finish line. The pairings for the final 4. Warren Johnson against Bruce Allen. Johnson having lane choice. The other half of the field, Jerry Ekman against Larry Morgan, with Morgan 7:35 getting the lane choice. Steve?
You're within 2/100ths of the quickest elapsed time of the round.
Yeah, we had a real soft on that run. We just didn't want to rattle the tires on it, which we did just a little bit, so we're in good shape.
There's more there, apparently, David. It's time now for this regular feature on NHRA Today.
Castrol presents the GTX Pipeline, the latest news from the world of drag racing.
Some of the hard-trying independent teams in Pro Stock are making changes to become more competitive in 1991. Don Beverly, who struggled all last season to qualify, has announced that Pro Stock legend Bill Grumpy Jenkins will be serving as crew chief on his Oldsmobile. Buddy Ingersoll, who put on an impressive performance at the Mile High Nationals where he reached the Final 4, will trade his Buick for a Pontiac Trans Am. And Virginia's Jim Yates, who started the Northwest Nationals last August, also has plans to run a Pontiac during the coming season. Finally, the most traveled driver of 1990, Scott Jeffreyon, hopes that his recent test drive behind the wheel of Warren Johnson's second car will lead to a full-time ride in 1991. Johnson's Oldsmobile was the 3rd Pro Stocker that Jeffreyon had driven in the last 8 months.
The car we ran at the beginning of the year, which was owned by Ron Gross, the car had Warren's power under the hood. So the power you're working with was basically the same. It's just different chassis, things like that.
Be snowing where you are, but as Steve Evans and I were transported back in time to this day, September 1st at Indianapolis Raceway Park, the sun's shining and it is hot, and Warren Johnson resetting himself in the lane. He is against Bruce Allen. Johnson has got the lane choice, but he did not like where he was lined up, so he backed up, repositioned himself. Starter Buster Couch said, bring it to the starting line, let's get ready to race. Just because Warren Johnson has the quicker elapsed time of the 2 and he was the #1 qualifier, don't count Bruce Allen out. He is a 2-time winner of this race in 1985 and 86. In from behind, Warren Johnson. WJ sets low ET of the main at a 7:33, 188 miles an hour, but he has to overcome a hole shot by Bruce Allen. Watch the car in the far lane. That bright yellow Beretta moves quick, and it gets out ahead of Johnson's Oldsmobile. As they reach the halfway point, Warren Johnson had started to close the gap until, as they neared the finish line, 1,320 feet away from the starting line, the Oldsmobile was beginning to show its dominance. Warren Johnson pulled alongside and then ahead and took the victory by a margin of 15,000.
Boy, you told us earlier there was more in this girl, and there was. 7:33, you drove around Bruce Allen.
I saw him put a little fender on me, and this Oldsmobile just powered right by that Chevrolet. I mean, I am happy.
You can't do worse than 10 grand now.
Oh, that's great.
Well, I haven't seen him this heavy in a long time.
Steve, as Warren celebrates down at the far end of the track, our last pair of cars in this round of 4 gets set for eliminations. This is the Pontiac of Jerry Ekman. He is in the far lane, the man with the lane choice. Here on the near side of the racetrack, the Oldsmobile of Larry Morgan, the defending champ. And again from behind comes the Oldsmobile Oldsmobile. Morgan wins it 7:35 at 187 miles an hour. And another big hole shot by the car that did not have the quicker elapsed time. We're talking, in this case, about Jerry Ekman over in the far lane. Ekman moved nearly 0.05 of a second ahead of Larry Morgan. That's a big distance to make up at the finish line, and Morgan in his Oldsmobile was up to the task. From this point on, about halfway down the racetrack, it was all Larry Morgan. All Ekman could do was watch that green, white, and red machine pull up alongside and then passed him, putting Morgan in the finals for the second year in a row to race the same opponent he did a year ago. Warren Johnson and Larry Morgan, a pair of Oldsmobiles, with WJ getting to pick the lane. Steve?
Larry, you didn't win that by more than a coat of paint.
Well, it doesn't matter as long as I won. That's all that matters.
And you had to come from behind to do it.
Well, you know, I knew I was a little bit late when I looked over and Jerry's ahead of me, so I thought I'd just have to step on a little bit harder.
Well, I'll tell you, hit passing gear, but you've lost lane choice. You're 735 not matching Warren 733.
That's okay. I'll just have to do the best I can to win. You know, I will have to drive well to win.
All right, the finalists are set, and they're both driving Oldsmobiles.
The Hurst Mr. Gasket Pro Stock Finals next.
Welcome back, everyone, to Indianapolis and the Mr. Gasket Hurst Pro Stock Challenge. Just the final round remains. $50,000 to the winner, $10,000 to the runner-up. And Dave, do you realize how much money you and I could make if we were less than honorable? I mean, these fans love to wager on their favorites. We could kill them. Think of all the NFL games we know who won this season. Get me to Vegas, Atlantic City, any sports book, anywhere. And also, I've been looking for maybe that DeLorean from Back to the Future with the old guy that played Jim in Taxi, because I don't know how we're getting out of here, and I'm getting worried.
Steve, the last time I saw that DeLorean, it was hit by a train. On the starting line, all they're thinking about is making enough horsepower to win $50,000. The defending champ, Larry Morgan, now repositioning himself. He does not have the lane choice, and we have found the quicker car always selecting the near lane where Warren Johnson sits with his Oldsmobile Cutlass. $50,000 to the winner, $10,000 to the runner-up. The finals of the Hurst Mr. Gasket Pro Stock Challenge. For the second year in a row, picks up the $50,000 payday. The crew offering congratulations to themselves. And inside that race car, you know, Warren Johnson has got to be as disappointed as anybody, leaving a red light on the starting line and for the second year in a row, losing to Larry Morgan. Watch again. You'll see just how quick Warren Johnson was when he left the starting line too soon. That's what the red light indicates, a disqualification for leaving the starting line before the green light comes on. There you see it. Warren Johnson with the red light, Larry Morgan with the green light, and 50 grand in his pocket. Steve?
Dave, Larry Morgan coasted up here with the biggest smile you have ever seen, his helmet already off. $50,000, 2 years in a row.
Happy anniversary to my wife. Today's our anniversary.
Oh, what a present.
Yeah, what a present.
What happened to your car?
I shook the tires real bad. I don't know what happened. Thank God that he red lighted.
Would you have stayed with it had he not red lighted?
No, there isn't any way I could. I was nearly sideways. In fact, I let off of it to keep from crossing the center line. I definitely have to thank Castro, Oldsmobile, Bob Pinella, my wife, Jimmy Oliver, Andy Magnus.
All the guys back at the shop.
All the guys back at the shop. Gary Pearman, Tom Roberts.
Happy anniversary.
And happy anniversary to my wife. I couldn't be any happier.
Well done, well done. Larry Morgan has won it.
And Steve, he has proved once again that luck can play a major role in taking a victory. He earned the right to race in the final round, but he got the big break against Warren Johnson, and for the second year in a row, takes the title. NHRA Today has been brought to you by Castrol GTX Motor Oil, engineered for today's smaller cars. And by Firestone, makers of Firehawk Performance tires for the street, the track, and the strip. Tires that meet the test. Promotional consideration provided for and a fee paid by this special offer from Diamond P.
For years, you've all loved Diamond P Sports Home Video, Decade of Thrills, the ultimate drag racing experience. Well, I've got some great news. Don Perdome and I are back with the all-new 90-minute Decade 2, the thunder of the 80s. Eddie Hill cracks the fours, then flies away. Connie Colletta marches past 290. Ed McCullough and John Collins will never forget the Cajun Nationals of 84, nor Kenny Bernstein, Maple Grove, PA, 87. Glidden won his 50th and his 75th in the same decade. It's all in Decade of Thrills, too. To get your copies in $24.95 to the address in your screen, or better yet, call 1-800-767-1600. Visa and MasterCard accepted, no CODs. Call now, 1-800-767-1600.
Larry Morgan, and the symbolic $50,000 check is the champion of the Hurst Mr. Gasket Pro Stock Challenge. Steve?
David, I don't know about you, but they put me in this goofy machine in New York. They zap me to Indianapolis. They say when the pro stock part of the race is over, go down to that big grassy field at the far end, and you'll get a ride back. Well, I'm in the grassy field watching qualifying for a race that happened months ago. What are they going to do? Beam me up? What is that noise? John, Force? Force? What are you doing here?
What do you think I'm doing here? I come here to get you?
This is not a time machine, it's a motor scooter.
It's not. It's all we got.
You got here on this?
You bet. We're leaving on it.
You're taking me back to winter on this?
Same guys that sent you here, sent me here to get you.
What about McClellan?
Hey, not room enough. Gotta go. Let's hit it.
Maybe. Force, Force, look out for the bear!
NHRA Today has been a presentation of Diamond P Sports. Steve, how am I going to get home?
Brought to you by Firestone, tires that meet the test.